I can't believe that this is a question that's even being asked. Would you let a blind person babysit your kids? So there's this show, it's a radio show. It's called The Breakfast Club. And they had an episode earlier this week where a caller had called in who is blind, and she was saying how she and her friends who are also blind and low vision, they're all in college, feel like they're constantly being passed over for people without disabilities in terms of finding employment, which I'm going to just completely, like, that's a totally different story altogether that I could go on a rant about, but we're not here for that today. Basically, the people who host this show do not think that blind people are capable of taking care of children, and neither do some of their listeners. They had put out on Twitter asking if people would let a blind person babysit their kids, and the overwhelming answer at the time was no, for various reasons. Heck, one person said that blind people can't drive for a reason. Watching a kid should be the same thing. It's like, no. Driving a car and babysitting are two completely different things. Like, yeah, I can't drive, me personally. Hi, I'm low vision. If you're new, nice to have you here. I have babysat children before. I babysat 4 kids one time with my now ex-boyfriend who is completely blind. And he was zero help. I was the one who was watching all of those kids. But we did a great job. I did a great job. Kids were ages 2 to 8. It was fantastic. Nothing went wrong. Okay, well, the boys did end up trying to hurt the girls, but that was quickly stopped. And that would have happened if there were sighted people babysitting these kids. You can't predict what kids are going to do. One of the responses on Twitter had said that they can't turn around for a second without their kid doing something stupid or dangerous. And it's like, okay, that's you as a parent. That is your parenting ability. That has no way reflects a blind person's ability to take care of a kid. Hell, I know a couple personally who both parents are blind. They have a 5-year-old who is sighted, and they have another baby that they're going to be having in a few months, and like, they do just fine taking care of their kid, and they're going to do great taking care of their next kid because they're great people and they're great parents. It has nothing to do with their disability. They were actually featured in a video that ACB had tweeted out, tagging the Breakfast Club in, on blind parenting. And NFB has also tweeted out resources about blind parenting, as are people who are involved in ACB and NFB. It's like, I know you can't change people's opinions on something, but at least maybe try to do some research before spouting off about it. I'm going to try not to blame the hosts of this show completely, because both sides were at fault here. The caller did not really give any examples on how she would be a great babysitter, and they also didn't really give her any chance to explain herself. So there were issues all around. However, these are my thoughts and opinions. If you hear noise in the background, that is my dog. This girl definitely could have given examples on how she would do XYZ, but again, the hosts should have given her the opportunity to explain herself instead of just jumping right in. Like, there definitely were issues on both sides here. However, right now the overall consensus on that question on Twitter is a lot of people who are either blind themselves, blind parents, a person who was raised by a blind parent, all chiming in and saying, hey, yeah, blind people are perfectly capable of taking care of a kid. I want to have kids. Me, like, in the future, not right now. But, like, I am so afraid that one day my child is going to be taken away by social services, or that there's going to be a court ruling that says that I am unfit as a parent because I have a disability. And that is a thing that's happening. It is a real thing. The right to parent for people with disabilities keeps getting challenged. And I know of cases where couples have had child services called on them in the hospital right after giving birth, and have had to demonstrate to the social worker that they're able to change a diaper and they're able to feed a baby. And it's like, hello, you're not doing this for people without disabilities who may not be able to take care of a kid properly because of various reasons. Like, blind people and people with disabilities in general should be held to the same standards as people without disabilities. I don't care if you are blind or deaf or in a wheelchair, or if you have autism. Like, if you're able to properly care for a child, all the power to you. Have that child, babysit that child. I don't care. I am much more apt to hire somebody as a babysitter who has a reputable background of babysitting as opposed to some random person off the street, blind or sighted, disabled or not disabled. Like, I'm holding everybody to the same standards here. If a blind person approaches me and has had experience babysitting, if they've taken a course by the Red Cross to be certified in CPR, which I have taken, then I would be much more apt to have them babysit my kid as opposed to some random sighted person who has had little to no experience. And maybe that's just because I'm low vision and I'm saying that as a low vision person, but like, if a sighted person approached me and had experience versus a blind person who approached me and had no experience, I would choose the sighted person. Not because they're sighted, obviously, but because they have shown that they have experience caring for children. That's how it should be. Parents should not have their kids taken away from them based on their disability. Parents should not be having to fight for the right to be parents based on their disability. In my opinion, the only people who should not be taking care of children are people who are unable to take care of children, regardless of disability. Like, maybe they're an addict, or they're abusing or neglecting their kids. They should not have those kids. Those kids should be going to somebody who is able to properly care for them and who is able to properly give them the life that they deserve. Okay. Calm. My thing is here, this show is run by a group of people who are people of color and come from marginalized communities. And they also show support for marginalized communities, but yet they're not showing support for the blind community. This is a big double standard. It's like they're being hypocritical. But I'm going to leave the tweet down in the description that the Breakfast Club had put out, as well as resources from ACB and NFB, and Carrie from Live Accessible. You know, like, she is low vision, her husband is blind, and they have a son who is low vision, and they're doing fine as parents. They're doing great. I'm going to leave her channel down below because she has a whole playlist on blind people doing things independently, shopping, walking, whatever, taking care of a kid, whatever, and different tips and tricks that she has for being a blind parent or a parent with low vision. And honestly, like, no sighted couple is the same. Like, people differ in how they take care of their kids and how they do things. Same with blind people. In terms of like going about doing things, like taking your kid out to the park, or making sure that you know where they are, or that they're in a safe environment, or that they're, not doing anything stupid. People have various techniques on how they watch their kids, whether they're blind or sighted or deaf or whatever. It's 2019. Like, I don't want to be questioned. I don't want my ability to take care of a kid to be questioned just because I am low vision. I know people who are blind parents, and they say that they have people come up to them constantly and talk to their children and tell them how inspiring and how amazing their children are, because the sighted community thinks that the child is the one taking care of the blind person. Like, how messed up is that? It's the other way around. The parent is the one taking care of the kid. The kid is not taking care of the parent. Same thing for a sighted couple. Sighted kid is not taking care of sighted parents. Sighted kid is not taking care of blind parents. Blind parents are taking care of kid, sighted or not. It's how it's happening here. That's how a normal family unit functions. The parents are the ones to take care of the child. There's no ifs, ands, or buts here. Another thing is that a lot of the people who are responding on social media about this have clearly done absolutely no research and have maybe never even come into contact with a blind person before in their life. Like, maybe they've only watched Daredevil, or have seen a blind person portrayed in a movie once, or In the Dark, that show that I did a whole playlist on, which I will link up in the cards and down below. I have thoughts on that. The media does not portray people with disabilities well, usually. Especially blind people, because blindness, like any other disability, is a spectrum. You have people who have some usable vision, like myself, and you have people who have no usable vision, or maybe just light perception, or whatever. Or you have blind people with other disabilities, or you have blind people who maybe they were sheltered a little bit more as a kid compared to other blind people who were basically raised like a sighted kid. You have all these different variables, and no one experience or one exposure that you have to a blind person should dictate how you feel about other blind people. You are judging a book by their cover, and that is not what this is about here. That is not what that show should be about either, and as far as I can tell and from what I've heard from people who actually listen to them, that's not what it's about. They are good at representing people from all communities and supporting people from all communities, but apparently not the blind community, not today. What is happening here? How is it that every time I turn around I feel like my community that I'm a part of is being marginalized again in some way? Like right now in Massachusetts, there's a case happening as to whether or not we can serve on a jury, which is a completely different topic that I don't want to talk about right now because like that's just going to open up a whole other can of worms. Point being, I don't care if you're blind or sighted or deaf or in a wheelchair or whatever your deal is. If you can take care of a kid, you're going to be babysitting my kids if you want to. Like, I would much rather be giving somebody some sort of employment if they're able to take care of a kid. I don't care if you're sighted or blind or whatever. If you can take care of a kid, you can take care of a kid, and that's great. If you can't, then you're not going to be taking care of my kids, regardless of your disability. That's how everybody should be thinking, in my opinion. We should be holding people with disabilities to the same standard as people without. It is 2019. And yeah, the world has gotten a lot more accepting since I was a kid, but we still have a long way to go here. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about people with disabilities being portrayed in the media is that that might be the only exposure that a person without a disability has to them. And the sad thing is that the media doesn't do a good job of portraying people with disabilities. And that needs to really, like, be stepped up here. I'm sick of being the inspirational person put up on a pedestal because of my vision. I'm sick of people grabbing me in public and trying to help me because they see that I'm blind and they think that, oh, it's okay, I can grab your wrist, I can pull you in some direction. That literally happened to me twice in one day when I was traveling through Boston. Random women approached me, grabbed me by the wrist. One lady was waiting for me at the bottom of an escalator and grabbed me and tried to help me get to where I needed to go, not even knowing where I was going. And it's like, you wouldn't do that to a sighted person, but just because I'm blind, I have a cane, people feel the need to grab me. And, like, without my consent. And, like, that's not okay. Nobody should be grabbing anybody. Everybody should be keeping their hands to themselves. And people should be allowed to parent and watch kids, regardless of their disability. And it just makes me sick that this is even a thing that's still being talked about. Anyway. Those are my thoughts for the most part. I'm just gonna leave it here before I continue my rant because we could be here all day. I know this is different than what I usually do, but if you like this video, that's great. If you didn't, that's also great. But I'll see you next time. Bye.